Hello and welcome to sin.bc, where it is 12:35, just half past 12. Oh, it's such a long way to say it in English, isn't it? So inconvenient in a way. But anyway, if I'm tired today too, gotta keep a theme, as I said. Not a shirt this time, bringing over my tiredness from yesterday. No, it's probably because I went up at like 5:30 today. Yeah, that's true because I need to go to the gym before I went to class because I had a class at 8:45 today, and then now we have a 2 hour gap where I could have trained, could have worked out if I was able to bring my workout stuff here to school, and if my gym was close to school, which it isn't. And then we have another class from half past one until 16:45, and then after 16:45 I will probably be home at like quarter past five, something like that. Quarter past five, half past five, and then I have 2 hours before I have to go to a rugby match I'm gonna see tonight. Yay! So I didn't have time to work out, and it's a Friday, I work out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And yeah, some people in class just commented like, why did you go to the gym in the morning so early? Why were you there before the lights were on? Which is actually true because the lights are power automatic. So I worked out for 15 minutes in the dark, felt like Batman. Kinda cool. Speaking about it, since Justice League is coming out in a few days, hype. Anyway, so that might be why I'm tired, because I didn't fit it in anywhere else where I could work out today. And as my friend so nicely pointed out, why don't you just work out tomorrow instead, or yesterday when we were, free. Free the entire day, but I had a meeting, so I wasn't free the entire day. And I was like, well, I have Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm planning my week around that. So everything else in the universe needs to shift so I can work out at those hours, or at those days at least. So that's why I woke up so early, but that's not why you are here, is it? You are here because you want to go through another dimension, or because I want to go through another dimension. And today we're going to go through the first added one to the Hosfstede dimension due to criticism and the critique I didn't know, but to invent a new perspective in the cultural dimension. And this is both business culture and culture, like society's culture. And yet again, I'm going to mention before we start that just because a country is defined with one of these dimensions, defined at one of the sides of the spectrum, doesn't mean that all the individuals in the country necessarily identify with this part of the spectrum, and might actually be kind of opposite to what a country is categorized as. Now, Hofstede has gotten lots of criticism about this, and you're free to just view all that criticism because it's on the internet and in lots of books. Just go to your closest bookstore or library and people will be like, oh yeah, we have some criticism alive from Hofstede. No worries, no problem. But yeah, we're going to go through the definition, then we're going to go through some country examples, and then, of course, my own personal experience. So, going to start with the definition. And it is a long one, just again. And yeah, just for short, long-term orientation versus short-term normative orientation, LTO for short. So, let's get into the definition. Every society has to maintain some links with its own past while dealing with the challenges of the present and the future. Societies prioritize these two existential goals differently, and there's where the two spectrums come in. Society who scores low on this dimension, for example, prefer to maintain time-honored traditions and norms while viewing societal change with suspicion. Those with the cultural which scores high, on the other hand, take a more pragmatic approach. They encourage thrift and efforts in modern education as a way to prepare for the future. In the business context, this dimension is referred to as short-term normative versus long-term pragmatic, PRA. In the academic environment, the terminology monumentalism versus flex-humility is sometimes also used. Now, I have no clue what the last two words there are. Absolutely none. But anyway, so this is a bit about if you're very low, you tend to have a short-term orientation, and you tend to have this very strong relation to traditions and such. Other things that is happening in your environment, and you're more focused on short-term gains versus long-term gains, for instance. Whilst if you're in the long term, you tend to be more about long-term gains, and you tend to invest in education because you know that the future will hold some problems and challenges, and investing in education today will yield you a better outcome in the future. Now, the different countries we're going to look at today is yet again France, Sweden, and United States. And shablam! I think I'm hoping this way. Yeah, yeah. Whoopoof. Oh no, did I take it away again? Was it too shaboof shablam? Okay. Back again, right? You know, magician. The blue one is France, the purple one is Sweden, and the green one is the United States. And we're looking at long-term orientation. As you can see, the United States seems to be pretty low on this one. Pretty short-term, if I say so myself, while the France and Sweden is a bit more medium to high. I would say Sweden is high, even though it's just 53, and this is a score that scores from 0 to 100. Now, what you will see is that the United States is low. And what does this mean? Well, if you think about it, is that so weird? The United States tend to have this, you know, this old piece of paper that they always refer to whenever they're going to change something. For instance, gun laws. There have been lots of, well, I shouldn't say it in such a jolly term, but there have been lots of school shootings in the United States of recent times. Much more than there should be. There shouldn't be none. So just that this has happened is, it's weird and sad, and it has happened a lot. And every time this happens, or something along those lines happens, they always seem to take up the gun control policy in the United States. I think that every president has somehow touched upon this because there always seems to be a crisis at hand. And this is, of course, I'm of course talking about their, what did they call it? The letter of independence? You know, the piece of paper. The Constitution, sorry. So every time there is a discussion about gun policy, they always say, but in the Constitution it says that we're allowed to have guns and rah, rah, rah. So they don't tend to change it because there are lots for, you know, traditions and stuff. Lots for what they've done in the past, and they would like that carry forward, even though it might hurt the future. While on the other hand, in Europe, we're very much, at least in Sweden, I don't know why we're in the middle there, but for me, like Christmas, New Year's Eve, Midsummer, Easter, religion, culture, overall, for me, it doesn't say anything. I mean, I wouldn't mind changing it. Even though, to give some context, I'm pro, you know, one culture, one world, one language, that entire approach. So that might be why I'm thinking like, oh, we're not at all in contact with our culture and short-term gain. I'm much more for, you know, the future, education and stuff like that. And I think that is also kind of reflected in Sweden here. I think that the purple line, as you can see, is 53, just above the middle ground there. And that's because we're very much inclined to move forward, and we understand that the future is important, but we also simultaneously try to keep some form of, what you would say, short-term structure, because if we don't look at the short-term at all, if we only look at the future, then we tend to lose some value in the short term, which is needed in order to build a better future. So I think that scoring at 53 there is a pretty good place to be. While in the US, I definitely would say that they can improve that condition. And here we have all of the things. Yet again, you can see where the United States is scoring in comparison to the other two, France and Sweden, in the other dimensions. And if you don't know what the dimension is for or what the dimensions are like, I have a couple of videos covering almost all of them, except for indulgence. And now we're moving on to my own experiences. So, my own experience is going to revolve around a time when I was still in Sweden, because I had this cultural clash about my mate, who is from Syria, who is having a completely different view on traditions and stuff like that, and has a total short-term orientation. Now, we were discussing traditions, and that's what it's going to revolve around. And I would just like to say that it's quite interesting that you can find this cultural exchange and this cultural clash while you're still in your own country. That's what internationalization has done to the world. Isn't it amazing that you can get all of these different viewpoints, these different perspectives, even though you're still in your own country, you know, comfortable within your own, in your own culture, really. So we were discussing this when I was still back in Sweden before this abroad semester here in France. So it was quite recently in a way, just 6, 7, 8 months ago, something like that. I think it was in May actually. And we were discussing traditions, and one thing that became obvious, like painfully clear, is that my mate had a very short-term orientation around why traditions is good, while I wanted to take them all away. That was the standpoints we had. Now we are at university, so we're often like discussing the very extreme points of why something is good or bad, because we're allowed to without being judged, because this is university. University is for like trying to explain and challenge different mindsets, isn't it? It's the one time in life you're allowed to both fail and gain at the same time. Nobody's going to judge you for it. So we took these two very different approaches, because it was very obvious that I was more towards, well, tradition doesn't matter, while my mates had a view of more of they do matter. So just for funsies, we took very extreme points of view. So I was like, we don't need to have traditions at all. I mean, if you look at the long-term view picture, you don't need them. They're probably going to get extinct by themselves at some point, because as the world is turning more to be more internationalized and to be more international, and people are coming together, it's going to be more of one culture. Well, like our own individual tradition is going to go away. Maybe there will spawn some international traditions, but that will be across all the world. And just imagine all the problems that will go away if we don't have traditions, because traditions bring principles, and principles those are bad. Because that means people are doing things even though they can't motivate. Why? Because they're only thinking about the principles. Once we were taking up the idea that, well, isn't traditions like the heart of the culture itself? Like, if we take away our traditions, what is defining us as a people? What are the differences between you and me in the culture? And I was like, exactly, that's the thing, nothing. Because we're all equal, we're all the same. And my mate was like, yeah, we're all equal, that's like a baseline. But just because we're all equal doesn't mean that we have to be the same, all of us. And I was like, that is correct. It's true. We don't all have to be the same, but I still love the idea that it's going to be easier to make us all equal if we don't have traditions and principles getting in the way. Know what I mean? And my mate was just like, yeah, I totally do. But still, I think that they're very important to keep the culture alive. And I was like, dude, we're not going anywhere with this. Anyway, so it ended up in a stalemate and in a draw, which it usually does, because there is no clear right or wrong answer. If it would, well, we would have traditions or we wouldn't have traditions. It's as easy as that. Or, I mean, people would agree on that tradition is good or tradition is bad, and from that we would we would probably evolve into keeping them or not keeping them. I know that we're having them, and I know that I don't like that idea, so that's why I'm trying to make a spin on it, that's saying that even though we have traditions, it might not be the optimal thing. So just bear with me on that. But interesting to see is that my mate is from Syria, very nice mate, very nice lad, and while we were discussing this, it became obvious to me that, well, the reason why we're having such a different viewpoint of this is because of the different cultures we are from. You tend to have me may tend to have a more short-term orientated culture, while I have a more long-term orientated culture. So it was only obvious for me that in the long term, these probably going to go away. We're going to focus on education and challenging thought and logic behind everything we do, tend to build a better society in the long run. While my mate didn't disagree about this, said that, well, yeah, that's true, but still in the short run, we having this short run idea all of a sudden all the time. And I thought it was really interesting to see that I could experience a culture clash discussing traditions and have two so vastly different views upon it, coming from two different cultures, even though I was still in my home country. Thought it was really amazing and really interesting. Hope you all have a nice day, mates, and I'll see you tomorrow with Indulgence, so that I actually can cover that too, and then I will have all of them as videos. It's gonna be awesome, mates. It's gonna be amazing. See ya.